Hello, welcome to this channel and to this video. I thought today I would talk about, this is very informal by the way, obviously you can tell by my dress. I thought I would try an experiment, and this is something that I wanted to try out for quite a while. I guess you could call it sort of a social, testing your social network, okay? And what I mean by that is the social network that we seem to build up over a period of time. Work colleagues, friends, people that we know, people that are on, apps like Instagram or Facebook typically, or any other social networking kind of platform. And, I thought, I've built up relationships, if you like, with people who I would consider to be friends, okay? So this is opening up a whole bag of worms, in my opinion, in my world, where what is classed as a friend is somebody probably very different from potentially who you would class as a friend, okay? So I guess in a way where I've heard a lot of people saying things like, they've got X amount of friends, they're really kind of acquaintances. They're just people that you've come across, had a conversation with, possibly stayed in contact with, maybe even did some social, like being to parties maybe, or home parties, or maybe gone to an event or something together, and all that kind of thing. I wouldn't necessarily call those people friends in my world, okay? A friend in my world is probably a very different person, and it's subjective, isn't it? Who people call friends. But I thought what I would do is remove myself from interacting with people, okay, as a benchmark to see whether anyone would ever say anything, right? And so I did it for a period of about 5 months, and I have a very, very narrow band of people that I trust, that I would actually, call acquaintances / friends, okay? So I thought what I would do is I would test to see whether any of these people that are friends, acquaintances, would ever say anything. And the reason why I do this, right, or why I did this, is because it's been playing on my mind quite a lot, how I seem to be always the person, now you may relate to this, right, how you're always the person that instigates or starts a conversation with your social network of friends, right? So, you post things on your social media, you may send a message to people, people who you class as your friends, or acquaintances who you would expect to get a kind of a response from, right? Because typically I find that people expect a fairly quick response from me if they message me about something, right? And I was just curious as to whether that is a two-way street, whether it kind of works both ways. What I've tended to find with people over the years is that although you might think that the people that you interact with, that you maybe work with, that you've, friends of friends, if you like, or acquaintances that you've come across, you don't get a response. And so you might message them and say, ask them a question about something, and you either don't get a response at all, or you get a response maybe several weeks later. I'm not talking about this experiment being something like if I message somebody and I don't get a response that day, or even within 3 or 4 days, say, or even a whole week, I'm not panicking. I'm not, sitting there thinking, oh, this person hasn't responded to me, therefore there must be a problem. Anyone who knows me will know that I'm not like that. So, you know, life happens to people, and I absolutely fully understand that. You know, but I thought I would try this with family members, like a whole range of people. So family members, people that I work professionally with, people who I've worked in an environment with, you know, even if it's only a fairly short time, you know, and there was like a gradient of people, and then you kind of ended up with people who I call on the outskirts that you may only come across and maybe chat with a couple of times a year or something. You know, there isn't, you know, there's kind of an outer circle of friends or acquaintances that you know that most people seem to have. But I was sort of you know, I kind of aimed this at the sort of the core, and which would be family, okay, you know, the core family, people that you're interacting with maybe on a daily or at least a weekly basis, and then there would be varying degrees of people that you would, you know, have outside at various different levels. So I decided a few months ago to go absolutely quiet. Don't say anything, don't post anything, don't message anyone. And I waited, right? I didn't panic, I didn't worry about it, I didn't do anything. So my core network of people, obviously, you know, we're talking about immediate family, you know, relatives and such like. That network still remained as active as it ever was, okay? But what was interesting to me was, after doing this, after nearly 5 months of complete silence from me, no posting, no messaging, nothing. So people were not even aware of what I was doing, okay? You know, nothing at all. So I did put nothing out on social media. On a personal level, I didn't ask anyone any questions. I didn't interact with anyone. And the, if you like, the next circle out. So these were people potentially who I work with on a professional level, people who I would say was relatively interactive with, you know, even almost on a daily basis, but certainly several times a week. Okay, this is the scary thing. I would interact with my next circle of acquaintances or friends like weekly, let's say, right? Certainly fortnightly, but I would say with this, you know, and I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. No responses, no queries, no messages, no questions, nothing to say, oh, I haven't heard from you for, you know, a few days. And it did make me wonder, 5 months that went on before I actually just started to get a bit of response from people. Like, you know, there was a couple of people that said, oh, hi, how are you? You know, and I thought, wow, that took 5 months. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so that was an eye-opener. That was a big eye-opener. Now, from a psychological point of view, you know, I can actually really now fully understand how people rely on this social network interaction, which I believe to be almost utterly fake. These people are not your friends, okay? Outside of your core network of family and possibly really close best friends, you know, that kind of level. Outside of that, people just don't care. They really honestly don't care, because there is no interaction from these people. They're not thinking about you. They are not, they don't care about you. Like, I could have died, you know, for all they concern. Like, they just don't, there was no real interaction. Now, during that time, I kept thinking, well, not kept thinking, that's the wrong word, but I was curious about, do they not notice that I'm not interacting with them? Because it was all, and this is another thing that it highlighted the fact that it was all one-way communication. So I would be nearly always the instigator of a conversation, or I would be an instigator of asking questions, for instance, whether it was directly or indirectly, right? And then you would get these responses from people. And I just kept thinking, do you know what? For those 5 months, I had utter peace and quiet. I didn't feel obligated to interact with this kind of outer circle of acquaintances who are not really friends, in my opinion, because a friend would be somebody who would care about you. So if they hadn't, if they were recognizing the fact that you hadn't interacted with them or messaged them or posted anything, even if it's for a couple of weeks, a friend in my world would have actually messaged and said, hey, are you okay? I haven't heard from you for 2 weeks, right? Didn't happen. It didn't happen. Nothing happened. No interaction from anyone on that outside of that core network of people, which, by the way, is extremely small, because in my world, a friend is somebody that you can trust. And so it really does limit things down quite a lot as to who those true friends are on that inner core network, social network. Outside of that, absolutely no one does. They just don't care. People just really don't care. So it was an interesting experiment. And when and it was quite interesting, the people that I did get a message from after like 5 months all of a sudden, because what happened was I posted something, right? I thought, okay, this is 5 months, right? This is 5 months of almost silence from people, and it wasn't until I posted something that I started getting responses back from, I would say, predictably, people who, were fairly strong acquaintances, let's say, prior to the 5 months. So it was quite an interesting experiment. It really was. Now, has it changed anything for me? Not really, because, well, it has and it hasn't. It highlighted the fact, obviously, that outside of my core social network, right, no one really cares, okay? So that didn't kind of surprise me. I was able to not feel guilty about communicating with people who quite clearly don't care. And so I got an awful lot more peace. I got a lot more. I didn't feel obligated to interact on a social network platform needlessly, right? It just really didn't matter. And what I actually did do was I removed myself from an awful lot of online forum groups, because I just kept thinking, well, unless these people care about you, what's the point? What's the point of actually interacting with them all the time, unless there's a reason for it, if it's a professional level reason or such like, or a, mental health reason, or a work reason, or something like, a family reason, then there's no point. Why are we wasting our time on all of this stuff? When at the end of the day, outside of your core network of people, absolutely zero people care, right? That's the key thing to remember, that people on social networking don't care. They don't care about you, work colleagues, people that you've worked with, people that you even work with on a professional level. They're obviously in their own little world, and you're not part of their world, right? And it's difficult to accept that, I think, for a lot of people, because they're clamoring for this recognition all the time. And I notice this from the psychological side of things, and conversations I have with other therapists and with clients, etc. Is that there is this need, there's this driven need to be recognized by people and have acknowledgement of almost their existence, and it has been a bit of an eye-opener. It really has been a bit of an eye-opener. It's kind of scary, really. I've never really been somebody who's been sucked into what I call the vortex or the matrix of social networking, where, you know, and I've mentioned this before in other videos, you know, you go onto a bus, or you go onto a train, or some form of, you know, you go into a restaurant even. I mean, you go into a restaurant and everyone is just there. Partners, husbands, wives, family, boyfriends, girlfriends, whoever they are sitting there with their phone in their hand. And they're flick on their phone all the time. And so, you know, to actually quite a large number of people, and we're not talking about, you know, I predicted all this sort of 15, 20 years ago when smartphones first came in, and I could already see walking down the high street of you know, cities and such like, and people were just literally standing there staring at this device, flicking around things, you know. And I knew even back then that this would just suck people's social interactivity. It would just destroy it, because people stop communicating. And now it's, in my opinion, so bad that when you walk into, you know, you go out for a meal or a restaurant, or you go to a party, for instance, and people are just literally sitting there. They're walking around with their phone in their hand, and they will just sit there in silence around a table, all browsing, you know, their device. And it's scary. It's seriously scary. And I think it's actually a really good thing to you know, I interact on social media on a professional level very rarely, on a, you know, on a personal level really anymore, if only when it concerns my inner core network of people, real people, right? And so that way you're protecting yourself from the mass media, from the negativity of social media, etc. But on a professional level, that is the only time I really ever do it. And I do that generally first thing in the morning, and that's it for the day. I might check a couple of times throughout the day, but I'm certainly not spending hours and hours and hours on there, you know, checking what everyone is doing or posting and such like. And even more so after this experiment. Not that I was madly on social media anyway, but it did allow me to actually cut out an awful lot of my so-called Facebook friends on my profile. I cut out about 75% of the people that were, you know, that over the years, you know, when Facebook first came out, for instance, you know, I mean, everyone was sort of connecting and say, oh, you know, this friend, that friend, and the relative of so-and-so and so-and-so, and, you know, so-and-so and so-and-so's other friend and whatnot. And you would build this massive network of people who you just really didn't have any idea about. And you know, I would highly recommend that you just do it yourself. You know, go down this route of basically just, it wasn't so hard for me, but I can see that it would be hard for other people. You know, I wasn't one of these people that sit there on their phone, you know, 8 hours a day or whatever, browsing social media. So for me, going from, you know, probably 30 minutes a day to going to nothing and not really caring what anyone was saying, you know, and just recognizing the fact that I had no interaction from anyone outside of my core network of you know, my social network, and it was an eye-opener. It really was an eye-opener. But it just makes you think. Even if you just think to yourself, how much effort am I putting in? You know, and I know this is going to be different. This is very subjective, but how much effort are you putting in yourself in order to get a response from other people, right? Now, you could be one of these people that gets responses and gives responses all the time, right? And I would seriously question how much energy that is taking out of your day and time. You know, How much energy and time is that taking? And then also explore, what is that giving you, really? In real terms, what is that giving you? Is that giving you calm? Is it giving you peace? Is it giving you the kind of social interaction that you really need? Or do you really need to communicate with people one-to-one, or one-to-many, maybe, you know? It's a big difference. There is a real big difference between this device that everyone holds and spends so much time on, and the real interaction with real humans without the device, right? Put the device away, put it on silent, stick it in your bag, stick it in your pocket, put it wherever, you know, and spend some time talking to people, you know. And that outer network can be people that you speak to in the street. You sit down on a bench in a street or whatever, and there's somebody else there. Interact with that person, even if it's just polite conversation about something. You know, that is more meaningful than potentially responding to or you know, interacting with people on social networks that don't care, right? They don't care. They really do not care about you, your life, and what is happening to you as a person. And it's difficult to swallow that, I think, for a lot of people. That you know, people have been led to believe that this is a caring network and you've got all these friends and such like. But the reality is, those people don't care. They've got their own lives to live. They've got their own core network of people. And outside of that, they don't care about anybody, you know. It's been very much a bit of an eye-opener. So that's today's thoughts, feedback, response to a social experiment that I've done, and I still have in place, to be honest with you, because that outer network, right, you know, outside of the core, not the wide network, but the outer core network of people has drastically reduced even further for me. And it just really highlighted the fact that we need to have more face-to-face, human-to-human, person-to-person, spirit-to-spirit interaction with people, not on some social media platform where pretty much anyone can lie about whatever they want, and everything is actually really, really superficial. Doesn't mean anything to anyone, really. But that's another video. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video soon.